Solidari-Tea people, how are we doing? Welcome to the Brews at 10 on my left eye. I'm your host Lefty. A warm welcome to everybody watching this evening. Let me know how you're brewing this Wednesday. Chris, Flowsnake and more, great to see you jumping in the chat, nice and early. And Hedy also. Solidari-Tea people. So it is another Wednesday, which means PMQs. Forgive me for not having an intro meme or a clip on the stream. It's going to be somewhat of an abridged introduction. I want to get straight into things. As well as PMQs, of course, we've also had this tariff announcement from Trump, which he was still making just before I started to get ready for the stream. So I'll be going over that. It's been a good news, bad news kind of day, story-wise. Yeah, the Trump tariffs aren't going to be so great, but it does look like Elon Musk is going to be stepping out of D.O.G.E. Or is he? Well, there's a question mark in the title of the live stream. So it could be either, but we are seeing a lot of contradicting reports with other things as well, so I'll be going into those stories after PMQs. Great to see you're all doing well. Hope you're feeling very well. Also, thanks for throwing up the Palestine flags, Hedy. Awesome. So yeah, a busy one for me and lots to get into, so we're diving into PMQs rather promptly. Out of the frying pan into the golden wok. That's one way of looking at it. Okay, abridged mandatory self-promotion. Please make sure you've hit all the buttons. Like, subscribe if you want to join the chat. Please hit share and put us out on your social media. Thanks a lot for all of your comments on recent content as well as your shares and likes. Hope you enjoyed that video that came out yesterday. Please take a look. Also, it's all about Keith's lies about freezing energy bills. So yeah, please hit buttons. You might also like to consider supporting the channel with a membership. And one of the tremendous privileges that you'll get is that you'll be added to this list of incredible core supporters on the channel, core members. Can join the brew crew. And it's just 99 pence. Please do check out the perks. Kits, thanks for watching and or listening, whichever you prefer. Yes, Hedy, I'm glad you're in the chat actually. We're alluding to that problem, hopefully temporary, with the memberships again. I did put in a complaint, well, registered a problem, as it were. With the support team, unfortunately, it wasn't great. In terms of their response, I wasn't particularly satisfied, if I'm honest. They suggest that the individuals who are trying to gift memberships contact the support team. I did mention another problem, which I won't go into as well, which they've not got back to me on, so not great there. But please don't let that put you off trying to buy gift memberships. I mean, we do have to see if it's working after all. But Super Chat is also open, as well as Super Thanks if you're watching back on a replay, I should say. So I'm currently on 84 members. I'll just bring you good people onto the screen, the chats. There we go. So thanks once again for all of your contributions, getting us up to 84. It's more like 1984 these days, 8T4 and only 16 remaining. Oh yes, the puns certainly were flowing on Monday's live stream. Let's have more of that tonight, people. You know, I like to see a bit of that in the chat, as well as more Palestine flags. Thanks more for throwing those up as well, and Kit. Might have time to touch on the latest on Palestine later on. We'll see how we're doing for time. Yeah, Morbius, that story caught my attention earlier about the witness from an attack on an ambulance convoy. Despicable tactics, and his testimony contradicts the claims of Israel. Shock horror. Perhaps more on that later. Yeah, so if you're not a regular viewer, we do like a tea-based pun on the Brews at 10, for obvious reasons. I think that's all the self-promotion boxes ticked for now. Well, Chris, they have a certain scarcity so far, but if you keep that up, they certainly won't. As rare as a hen's teeth. Very good, very good. They're not only increasing in frequency, they're increasing in quality. Yeah, I'll try not to corpse too much as they come in. There's still a few that almost trigger me just thinking about them. Yeah, the MOT one about the car breaking down. Because they filled it with brews and so on. They were getting very good, so yes, the language of brewdayism certainly is becoming increasingly popular. Quality streaming, people, serious topics, serious politics, and observations on society from a socialist point of view. My left eye. Hey, if the world's going to pieces, may as well go down with a smile, eh? Sweating laughter emoji. So shall we, people? Let's dive into PMQs. quick explanation of the rules for anybody who's new. In fact, I'll do that after the intro on. Yeah, let's start with the intro. How's about that? So if you're a new viewer, it's not only PMQs, but it's also a game of Keith's catchphrases. Well, what in the bloody hell might that be, I hear you ask?
We now come to Prime Minister's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Deliver. Black hole.
Plan for change.
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 Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's right, it's Keith's catchphrases, so there's a few examples. In fact, two of those examples will be pitted against one another. This evening we have two contenders every time we watch PMQs, and this is my first time reaction, by the way. A genuine first time reaction. I've not even seen any snippets or thumbnails this evening, people. I've been busy, and then there was the Trump speech, as I said, which I was watching, so it's all new to me. The current reigning champion, Deliver, will be taking on Black Hole. It's Black Hole's second attempt. I'll show you why that's significant here with the rules. So first of all, contending phrases must be spoken by Starmer. Nobody else in the House of Commons. Phrases get knocked out after two losses in a row, so that's why it's important that Black Hole puts up a good fight this week. The final and third rule, variations are allowed, slight variations such as delivering changes planned, etc. The tense and so on. Okay, everybody okay with the rules? Excellent. Right. Politics Clive, nice to see you in the chat as well. So yes, those are the rules, and every time...
We now come to Prime Minister...
Every time we hear one of them, you'll hear this noise. Today we've got Deliver, which is represented by Postman Twat, who I'll show you now. Just one moment. There he is, and also Black Hole. So we'll keep score on the left hand side of the screen. I'll just open up the House of Commons, so to speak. Should have that there now. Okay, fantastic. So it's 0-0. Oh, it almost is 0-0. Of course, we had to change things around last time, didn't we? Right. Okay, just about good to go. I'll just bring up the logos. There we go. May or may not have been faffing around last time, deliberately putting logos over certain people's faces. Honest. Okie dokie. Right, we're good to go. It's going to background music. And Lindsay Hoyle's going to take it away for us. No spoilers in the chat, people, if you've already seen this. Away we go.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I wish to inform the House about my recent trip to Ukraine. It was at the invitation of Ruslan Stefanchuk, chairman of the Rada in Ukraine. I joined speakers from across Europe in a memorial service to mark the third anniversary of the Butcher massacre and to hear the important testimony of the survivors of this terrible atrocity. I also delivered a speech at the Butcher Summit, which was opened by the President of Ukraine, and took with me...
Sorry about the buffering. I wasn't expecting Lindsay Hoyle to get in the first deliver this time around. What's this all about? Is it? Before we do this, I've got something I'd like to get off my chest.
Specific cross-party messages of solidarity from the House of Commons, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. The appreciation felt by the people of Ukraine at the support offered by this House, the people of the United Kingdom...
He probably always is pissed, yeah. He sounds like, if a flannel could talk, it would talk like Lindsay Hoyle. He sounds like he's trying to eat a huge slice of watermelon.
Order, order. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. John Grady.
Get on with it.
Question number one, please, Mr. Speaker.
Question number one, please, Mr. Speaker. Yada, yada, yada.
Mr. Speaker, just
They'll
picking
further
up on
such
your comments.
meetings later today.
On Monday night, I spoke to President Zelensky, and he wanted me to pass on to you his thanks for attending in Ukraine, particularly on the third anniversary of the massacre at Bucha, which I've been to Bucha. It's a terrible, terrible third anniversary. So I pass on those thanks. Mr. Speaker, we've been preparing for all eventualities ahead of the confirmation of US tariffs later today. Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests. And the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That's why we're working with all industries and sectors likely.
So it's just the way one of the zeros is placed, the one for black hole. When it goes back to the other shot, it looks like Angela Rayner is peering through some little gap in her.
And we will rule that thing out. Mr. Speaker, our deepest sympathies are with the people of Myanmar and Thailand. We are sending immediate life-saving support to assist their efforts. May I also extend my personal condolences
serious stuff, people.
To the family, friends and colleagues of Christina McKelvey. She was much loved and will be sorely missed, especially by our colleagues in the SNP here and in Scotland. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
John Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the full state pension will rise by £472 a year, putting money in the pockets of pensioners in Glasgow and across the United Kingdom. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this...
No idea, Mo. No. Don't know who this guy is. No, nothing. I've not got anything.
Possible because of Labour's plan for change and our commitment to the triple lock.
Can't remember his name.
Well, he's absolutely right. We can commit to
Mr. Planted Question.
Because we've restored stability after they
the Right
crashed the
Honourable
economy.
Planted Questioner, MP.
Mr. Speaker, next week 12 million pensioners will receive up to £470 more. That's an extra £1,900 over this Parliament, including 1 million pensioners in Scotland. And the contrast couldn't be clearer. The Shadow Chancellor called the triple lock unsustainable, and the Leader of the Opposition wants to means test the state pension so that she can cut it.
Leader of the Opposition, can we bear it up?
You sounded quite visceral there. There was actually a bit of emotion in that, Keith. So that she can cut it.
Order. I know. You was inadvertently said. Carry on, Leader.
Rather than the Prime Minister congratulating himself for what we did, why don't we talk about what he's doing? Yes. From Sunday, Labour's jobs tax will mean many British businesses face a terrible choice: to cut wages, put up prices, or sack their staff. Yeah. What is the Prime Minister's advice to those businesses?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she says the triple lock
it's do all three and then blame the previous government, obviously.
Be the party of sound finances, but they blew all of that. Mr. Speaker, she asked what we're doing. We're clearing up the mess that they left. We're dealing with global instability, and we recognise the pressures that are bearing down on businesses and individuals and working people. That's why we're rolling up our sleeves.
He delivered.
Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to announce the national living wage increasing by £1,400. That's a pay rise for millions of workers. We've announced £150 for the Warm Homes discount, extended now to 6 million households. That's 1 in 5 families. And wages are going up faster than prices. And never forget, the party opposite, worst living standards on record, inflation up to 11%, public services left on their knees.
Mr. Speaker, the only mess is the one that he made with his budget. They had an emergency budget last week that fixed nothing. He says he's bringing stability. All we see is fragility. During the election, the Prime Minister also promised that he would not increase taxes on working people. But even the OBR says that the jobs tax will be passed on.
And thank you for the gifted membership, James. Thank you very much. Solidarity. And it has gone through. That's great to see. Stuart's KH Viking Bear President was the recipient, so I hope you enjoy your perks.
She turns up every week to carp from the sidelines about the decisions we made at the budget. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, she held a press conference and she couldn't say whether she would reverse the decisions that we made at the budget. Now, I understand, because she can't bring herself to say that she doesn't want the investment of an extra £26 billion in our NHS. I'm not surprised at that. That's 2 million extra appointments, that's 1,000 more GPs, a pay rise for nurses, etc., etc. But let me get her position right if I can follow it. She wants the extra £26 billion
That's
in the
a lot of lies in there, by the way.
Paid for by the national insurance rise.
See my previous video, if not done so already.
To reverse the national insurance rises, so she's now reduced this absurd position of voting in the budget, carping against a budget that she actually agrees with.
Mr. Speaker, I don't agree with making people poorer. I don't agree with pensioner poverty. I don't agree.
Of course you do. She's a Tory. Pull the other one.
They are calling it Awful April. That's because of decisions he has made, because he made promises and broke them. His promises are worthless, Mr. Speaker. Yes. People are getting poorer. Yes. Before the election, he pledged to freeze council tax. Instead, it's going up everywhere. Even in Birmingham, where there's 17,000 tonnes of rubbish uncollected on the streets. Does the Prime Minister regret promising the British people he would freeze their council tax when he has so obviously failed?
Well, I have to ask, if she doesn't want people poor, why didn't she resign when she was in government? Mr. Speaker, the last government put up council tax for 12 years in a row. She, I think, was actually Minister for Council Tax. And in the year she's been, what she do? She put it up. And even now, the Conservatives' own Local Government Association manifesto, so currently their position, page 9, we asked the government to remove the caps on council tax. So who's leading the charge? Hampshire County Council, they wanted a 15% hike, we said no. Slough Council wanted a hike, we said no. Windsor and Maidenhead was Tory, now Lib Dem, they wanted a hike and we said no. And it's no surprise that council tax is £300 cheaper under Labour councils than under Tory councils.
Still scoreless.
He doesn't want to talk about Birmingham, and that's because he knows the situation. So I'll say it again. 17,000 tonnes of rubbish on Birmingham streets. Yeah. Normally, a state of emergency is called for natural disasters, not Labour ones. Yeah. His policies have left our economy dangerously fragile. The Chancellor, once again, left herself no room for manoeuvre. Economic experts, real economists, say she will either have to break her fiscal rules or put up taxes. Which will it be?
Prime Minister.
I think she must have picked up the script she was using a few weeks ago. Because it was only then she was saying...
Oh yeah, it says, look, we've got a literal game here predicting what you're going to say, and defending Kevin Badenoch here, but this is the your worse at what we both do than we are phase of the Prime Minister's question sessions.
In any year since the 1980s. NHS workers were on the picket line, not on the front line, and that sent waiting lists through the roof, so we'll take no lectures on industrial harmony from them.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House would have heard that he didn't say whether or not he could keep his fiscal rules. That means that it's either that or putting up taxes. 9 months ago, we left Labour the fastest growing economy in the G7. We did. And I remember watching his MPs laughing at their first destructive budget. They've had another one that has made our economy dangerously vulnerable. The Bank of England says his policies have pushed up the cost of living for families. Does he disagree with the bank, or does he accept his policies mean higher bills?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she must be the only person left in the country who actually thinks they did well on the
Well,
economy.
James, I'm sure you're not alone in that sentiment. I certainly share it. I can't decide who I despise the most, which just goes to re-emphasise their duality.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, she's so obsessed. She's
As it
so
were.
obsessed with
Or
talking
their
down the
symbionts.
country that she's not read
Symbiosis.
the OBR forecast. Growth up in 2026, 2077 up, 2028 up, 2029 up. And thanks to our planning reforms, the largest growth measure the OBR have ever costed. And what did the Tories do when the bill came?
Of course, yeah, a few weeks ago, he went through this list, and then the rest of them shouted up, and it was very rehearsed. It didn't go very it didn't go very well on that occasion, did it? He was sort of turning around and saying, why aren't you shouting up at the same time I am? He's almost tried to, turn it into a thing. When I say sausages, you say up. Sausages. Sausages. And speaking of sausages, another thing that's come to my attention of late,
We apologise for the interruption of this broadcast while Lefty goes off on a tangent. He's been given a cup of tea and will be back with you shortly. In the meantime, make sure you've hit the thumbs up button and left a comment down below. Thank you for your patience.
For Parliament, They abstained. Well, you don't grow the economy or build houses by a same. They're the same old party. They haven't changed. Nothing's new.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about inflation. We left it at 2%. It is now twice what the OBR forecast when we were in government. The fact is, his decisions have made our economy fragile, just as we face global trade wars. In November, I urged him to seize the draft US trade deal Conservatives negotiated. Instead, Mr. Speaker, he lost our most experienced trade negotiator. It's no wonder he can't get a tariff deal for Britain. On this side of the House, we secured investments for that industry, £600 million from BMW, £2 billion from Nissan, £4 billion from Jaguar Land Rover. Labour's record is a car industry in crisis, even before tariffs. There are 25,000 more jobs now at risk. He says he's preparing for eventualities. Can the Prime Minister tell us exactly what he is doing to protect the British car industry from his failure to negotiate?
We're taking a calm, pragmatic approach and keeping our feet on the ground. There are constructive talks that are ongoing on a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That is really important at this moment. We are working with all sectors that are likely to be impacted, and we're guided by our national interest at all times. And that's why we've said we won't rule anything out. But it is important at a moment like this that we don't have knee-jerk reactions, that we are actually cool-headed about this, and that's why we won't rule anything out. But she must be. She's the Trade Secretary. She was the Trade Secretary, Mr. Speaker, who failed to get a trade deal with the US.
Mr. Speaker, today the Trump administration.
Sorry about that earlier, people. Microphone problem, but it's back again now. I've been listening out for delivers and black holes. I don't think we've had any yet, so it still stays at 0-0. Sausage advice. Clive. Very good. Sausage-based puns now creeping in to the brews at 10. That one was a banger, Clive. Was a banger. Okay. Let's carry on. No, I wasn't having a biscuit.
Administration will announce new tariffs that will hurt working people in the US and around the world. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that at a time when big tech has grown fat by corrupting our politics and preying on young people, that the wrong approach would be to pander to his bullying tactics and detect millionaires in his imperial court by cutting the digital services tax? Can he assure the public that the poorest won't get cuts while the richest get a free ride?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising this is an important issue. And
do you think he takes all those gifts for nothing in return?
In particular, we have to deal with very carefully. We will, Mr. Speaker, always put the national interest first, and that's why I'm pleased that talks are ongoing and they're constructive talks. I do believe that a trade war is in nobody's interest, and all of the sectors and industries impacted are of the same
Well, it's
view.
coming, Keith. However
we'll
much you tried to kiss Trump's
arsehole. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the earlier remarks of the Prime Minister, particularly about Myanmar and Thailand? And can I support the aid that is going and hope that despite the budget cuts we can be as generous as possible because of the humanitarian crisis there? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has shown commendable leadership over Ukraine with his plan for a military coalition of the willing against Putin.
Coalition of the willing.
Will he now provide similar leadership with an economic coalition of the willing against Trump's tariffs for free trade so we can avoid a global trade war and a global recession?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think every week he tries to tempt me to make what I think is a false choice between our relationship with the US and our relationship with other countries, particularly Europe. I think that's the wrong choice on defence, on security and intelligence, for reasons that we've rehearsed across
security
this chamber. I also think it's wrong on trade and the economy. We have a good deal of trade, a balanced trade relationship with the US, and I believe that our interests are best served by calmly trying to secure.
God, there's not a lot happening here. There's just robotic exchange after robotic exchange. There's no real slamming critique. And oh my goodness, looks like a sea of blue. Look at it. How many of them are wearing blue?
But I increasingly fear that the deal won't be good enough to avoid a global trade war. That's why I think one of the options must be to work with our European allies, our Commonwealth allies and others, because we don't tackle Trump's tariffs. We could be saying goodbye to free trade for a generation. Mr. Speaker, if I may turn to a domestic matter now. 3 years ago, the American private equity firm KKR bought a 25%.
Was that a question or?
In Northumbrian water. Since then, people across the North East have seen their water bills soar, whilst in last year alone, Northumbrian Water has dumped nearly 1 million tonnes of raw sewage into Durham's Whitburn Coast Conservation Area. KKR are now poised to buy into Thames Water because ministers have ruled out a special administration regime. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that Thames Water will not be allowed to repeat the same trick of putting up bills and dumping raw sewage at the same time? They allowed it, he shouldn't.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his comments at the beginning of the question, I really do think it's not sensible to say the first response should be to jump in to a trade war with the US. That cannot be the first response of the United Kingdom, and I will resist his urgings to do that. In relation to water, he's absolutely right to point out the...
I'll just come in quickly on that. I'll talk about the tariffs in more depth later. But we didn't start this, the UK didn't start this, Trump has started this, and one thing will lead to another, and I'll go through that later, but that's inevitable, and we have been included in this. There's been an increase in tariffs, so it's not us starting it, Keith. Either way, it's bad. It's bad.
On water of the party opposite, just like a record on everything was appalling, and that's why I'm really pleased that we passed the Water Act already to take the necessary measures, but we will go further.
Deputy.
Yesterday, the Work and Pension Select Committee visited Manchester, where we saw the power of devolution in action, in this case helping people find work.
Yes.
So with just 5 percentage points separating Labour and Conservative last time, does the Prime Minister agree that to get the maximum advantage from Labour's devolution offer, the West of England needs an ambitious Labour mayor in Helen Godwin for more jobs, to fix our buses and to get the homes we need built?
I believe it's best for communities when their leaders have skin in the game. Helen Godwin grew up in Stapleton, went to college in Filton, and has a great record fighting for the community where she's raising her family. Mr. Speaker, our plan for change has delivered record funding for the West of England. That's more money for better buses,
for change.
potholes, and getting young people into
missing
work.
out there.
That's the difference. A Labour mayor working with a Labour government delivers for the West of England.
Oh, finally. Bada boop, bada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will know that many in the House will be assuaged by his suggestion that he will act in the national interest in relation to tariffs. But most won't have considered that in acting in the national interest, what occurs in Northern Ireland is no longer solely in his control. He knows that exports from Northern Ireland are UK exports, rightly so. Yet imports to Northern Ireland could lead the consequence of EU retaliatory action. In keeping all of his options open, now we have to live in a world with the consequences of the last government with his support. Will he indicate that he is prepared to take steps to either exempt Northern Ireland from EU action or take retaliatory action if they do not?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for raising this issue, which is of real importance to his constituents and everybody in Northern Ireland. It is a very serious issue. That's why we need to be calm and pragmatic. And I think that's what workers and businesses in Northern Ireland would want to see from this government at a time like this. We are, as he would expect, looking carefully at the details of any retaliatory tariffs announced by the EU, if they are, and what impact they might have on businesses. As he knows, where goods do not enter the EU, then businesses
can
hope
it can be more entertaining than the meeting. Good to see you.
But I reassure in the interests of Northern Ireland at the forefront of our decisions, and he may want to know that this morning the Business Secretary spoke to the Northern Ireland Executive because this is a serious issue and we need to work together to resolve it in the interests of everybody in Northern Ireland.
I did semi-zone out on that question. Apologies, people. No comment there.
The government resorted to damaging keyboard diplomacy. This government is leading, bringing 40 nations together this week to tackle illegal immigration. Like the Prime Minister, I've seen firsthand how counter-terror powers can disrupt threats before lives are lost. That same approach is essential in dismantling the smuggling networks, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree? It's time the Conservatives and Reform dropped the posturing, put national security first and backed our borders bill.
Well, I mean, the party opposite tried an open borders experiment. We are now tackling illegal migration. They talked about flights, Mr. Speaker. We've already removed 24,000 people with no right to be here. Under their Rwanda scheme, which was only ever supposed to return, I think, 300 people a year, what we've achieved in 9 months would have taken them 80 years. We've replaced a gimmick with a real deterrent.
Ken Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken very movingly and with genuine sincerity and affection about his time as a young man in the Langdale Valley and the Lake District in my constituency and how that helped to shape him. So I wonder if he's aware that the hill farmers who maintain those stunning landscapes in the lakes and elsewhere will be earning on average significantly less or barely half the national minimum wage due to cuts in their income, despite the fact they provide the backdrop to the remarkably important tourism economy. So would he agree to meet with me and upland farmers in the lakes and the dales so that we can design a scheme together to end this poverty and equip our hill farmers to produce food and protect our epic landscapes for generations to come?
Prime Minister.
He and I share a love of the Lake District. And we still go back there with our children now. This is a serious issue, obviously, and that's why we've put a record amount into farming at the budget, but also set out our roadmap. But I'll happily make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister to
well, you sold something out, that's for sure, Keith.
Take on board any points he has to make in relation to it.
Any bills?
Thank you, Mr.
It should be full of multicoloured plastic balls.
At Union Park,
You're right, Octo.
massive £1 million worth of charges to repair their heating system, to repair fire safety works that haven't been put right by the developer, who has now declared bankruptcy and walked away. Their new freeholder has washed their hands of responsibility and instead is leveraging huge ground rent bills and fines against those residents. Does the Prime Minister agree with me? This is exactly why we have to move forward with our plan, much delayed from the party opposite, to abolish the outdated leasehold system once and for all as part of our plan for change.
Prime Minister.
The Deputy Prime Minister is saying absolutely in my ear. Mr. Speaker, we will end the feudal leasehold system, which has left millions of homeowners subject to unfair costs and unreasonable practices. Our reforms include clear standards for repairs and maintenance, and this will give homeowners a greater say in how their homes are managed. And I know the Housing Minister will have heard what he said.
Calm.
Mr. Speaker, this Labour government has failed the British public at every turn. They have abandoned the WASPy women, leaving them without compensation they deserve. They have turned their backs on pensioners by failing to support the winter fuel allowance. They have let down children by keeping a 2-child benefit cap in place, and they will inflict further hardship on the most vulnerable by slashing $5 billion from benefits. But perhaps the most immediate and visible failure, one that poses an immediate and direct health risk to the people of Birmingham, is the appalling financial mismanagement of Labour-run Birmingham City Council. After more than a decade of Labour control, their incompetence has led to mountains of uncollected rubbish piling up on every street, so vast that it can be seen from satellites orbiting space. It is nothing short of a disgrace and a damning indictment of Labour's inability to govern. Will the Prime Minister take urgent action to protect the public health and the people of Birmingham by immediately deploying the...
Order. We're meant to ask a quick question, otherwise no one's going. Prime Minister.
Well, I've said the situation in Birmingham Council is completely unacceptable, but he might want to tell his constituents that we've delivered 2 million extra appointments for the NHS, so waiting lists are coming down for his constituents. We've delivered the national living wage of £1,400 increase, including for his constituents. We've got record investment into this country, growing the economy, including for his constituents.
Blunder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Hayward and Middleton North are grafters.
Hayward
they
and
want to
Middleton
work
North,
and they want to see opportunities created
Very
and the
far
skills
from
and
where the
investment
stream's
in
coming from you this evening.
infrastructure that we need in future. I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to fix the transport system in the north of England that's been holding us back, and I would like to invite him to the Acton Valley Development Zone in my constituency to discuss how we can create skilled jobs in North Greater Manchester.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for our question. We will unlock growth across the country in partnership with local leaders and giving powers to those with skin in the game. And we'll fix the North's broken transport system, another thing they left in a complete mess, with nearly £1.7 billion for local buses, for roads and for trams, and an additional £415 million to upgrade the Trans-Pennine route and fixing millions of potholes. And obviously I'll consider her kind invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Prime Minister and I last spoke, more than 6,000 people have signed an open letter to the Health Secretary in support of North Devon District Hospital, which faces a 10-year wait for urgent repairs. Please can I ask the Prime Minister why the hospital is still being denied a ministerial visit, and will the Government consider the Trust's emergency plans, meet with me and the Trust so we can discuss keeping the operating theatres open beyond 2027 to meet capacity?
Prime Minister.
As in our previous exchange, obviously the unfunded promises, fancy promises of the party opposite, meant his hospital would never have been delivered. They shouldn't moan, they should apologise to his constituents. We had to take tough decisions to make the programme deliverable, which is what we've done. We will continue to support the Trust to maintain facilities in advance of the new hospital investment. And the Minister for Secondary Care will be visiting the hospital, and that will be an opportunity, I hope, for the necessary discussions.
Mr. Speaker, Stone Lodge Academy, a special school in Ipswich, will be one of the first schools in the country to benefit from a new breakfast club this month.
Whack-a-mole,
It's an important step to tackling Suffolk's decade-long SEND crisis, as is the multi-million-pound funding settlement given to opening new specialist places across the county. Can the Prime Minister outline what steps he will be taking to further break down the opportunities for all children as part of our plan for change?
Well, I'm very pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, the first 750 breakfast clubs will open this month. And I'm pleased there's an early adopter in his constituency, as well as in the constituency of the Leader of the Opposition. I'm sure she will welcome that one of these weeks. Mr. Speaker, that will put £450 a year back in the pockets of working people. Mr. Speaker, today we've awarded £37 million to 300 primary schools to create up to 4,000 nursery places from September, making it easier for working families to access government-funded childcare.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2,700 workers at Scunthorpe Steelworks are facing redundancy, many more in the supply chain, and many of them are my Brigand Gould constituents. It's welcome that negotiations are continuing, but whatever the outcome, significant support is going to be needed for to support the local economy. I know that all those affected would appreciate and be reassured that if the Prime Minister could give an indication that he was personally taking an interest in this, and that at some point in the not too distant future he would meet with me, neighbouring MPs and the council leader to discuss the way forward.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to him for raising it. I do take a personal interest.
I care about the thing. I will set up a meeting with the appropriate MP, whatever it is, minister,
the challenges and how
depending on what it is, but that's yeah.
For those working there and their families and the community as a whole. And that's why there are negotiations. I do call on the company to accept the offer of financial support that has been advanced so we can achieve a sustainable future for the workforce, for the industry and the local community, because I do believe there's a bright future for steel and needs to be a bright future for steel.
Community.
I do take a personal interest in it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Too many of my constituents are struggling to get access to a GP appointment when they need one. Our GPs are trying their best, but they're struggling with capacity, outdated buildings and outdated tech. All because the party opposite broke the front door to the National Health Service.
Right themselves at this
Can
point.
the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that our plan for investment and reform will ensure they will be able to see a GP when they need one?
Brudeism.
Mr. Speaker, we are
You know it
focused
makes
on
sense.
delivering real results for patients by scrapping unnecessary targets, bringing back the family doctor and requiring online bookings to help the 8 a.m. scramble. We're investing an additional £889 million to reinforce the front door of our NHS, and that's the biggest increase for over a decade, and will that mean hundreds more GPs since we came to power. And this week we've announced record investment for community pharmacies to deliver more services for patients and free up GP time.
Was that a deliver there? Sorry, I was off beat. Rabbit bass jokes going on in the chat.
Which left a patient with a history of violent aggression, unconfined,
very quickly
untreated and completely unmedicated for 9 months until he killed Ian. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Focused on delivering real results
for
patients by scrapping unnecessary targets, bringing back the family doctor and requiring online bookings to help the 8 a.m. scramble. We're investing an additional £889 million to reinforce the front door of our NHS, and that's the biggest increase for over a decade, and will that mean hundreds more GPs since we came to power. And this week we've announced record investment for community pharmacies to deliver more services for patients and free up GP time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The recent NHS England report laid bare a catalogue of failures which left a patient with a history of violent aggression, unconfined, untreated and completely unmedicated for 9 months until he killed Ian Coates and the young friends Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber from Taunton in my constituency. Will the Prime Minister join with me and the people of Taunton paying tribute to the families who have campaigned on this? Will he confirm that a public inquiry is to begin? And will he confirm that in the context of 50% cuts to integrated care boards, that mental health services, both in the community and secure, will not suffer from those cuts?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this tragic case? And I do pay tribute to the families, often in cases like this, including this case. I find it hard to think how I would actually respond if I was a family member in circumstances like that. I'm not sure I'd have the courage that they have to campaign in the way they campaign, and I pay tribute to it. We do need to get to the bottom of all of the issues here, wherever they may lie, and that's what we will do.
Imogen Walker.
Mr. Speaker, in Hamilton and Clyde Valley, my constituents are struggling to access the
it will all be over soon.
they desperately need. 1 in 6 Scots are on a
Crocodile,
waiting
they'd be
list.
drowning in crocodile tears at this rate.
The waiting lists have been coming down for
Yeah,
the last
flood warnings
5
in London.
months, and more than 2 million appointments have been made available. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the SNP-led government should stop blaming everybody else for their failures? When Scotland's broken public services are their responsibility.
Well, Mr. Speaker, she's right. Over 60,000 Scots have been stuck waiting for tests or treatment for over a year. That's a 46% rise in 1 year. I had to check that figure because it's so staggering. 46% rise in 1 year. And despite this backlog, almost 50,000 fewer operations are being carried out compared with before the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, compare that to England, where we've driven down waiting lists with over 2 million extra appointments and scrapped NHS England to cut bureaucracy.
They did it again.
Scotland's NHS is in
the third time in a
desperate
row,
need
at
of
least.
reform, but the SNP have
The old cutaway, the old sly nodding going on there from Wes, shut up Wesley Streeting. You say the word NHS, the camera's got a little detector in it. Straight away, a massive light goes off in the editing suite, in the production room. Yeah. Cut to Wes immediately. Little twat. Onward.
no strategy, no plans, and no ideas.
Ragsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier, the Prime Minister seemed reticent to answer a direct question on his jobs tax. So, next time he comes to my constituency to enjoy the beautiful Buckinghamshire surroundings of Chequers, will he go 5 minutes up the road to Wendover, visit Rumsey's handmade chocolate, and explain to Kate Rumsey why his and his Chancellor's choices have led to a 15% increase in their costs, that they've already had to lay people off and reduce the hours of those that they still employ? Is that what he meant by growth?
I'm happy to tell anyone why. £22 billion black hole left in the last week. They've crashed the economy. They've ruined our public services. And as we mend that and rebuild the country, they carp from the sidelines. And even now, they can't bring themselves to say
it could
they
just be a
don't want the
consolation.
investment. They
The
can't bring them
vultures
say
may be
they'll
circling
reverse the
as we get
decisions
towards the
we've
end, but
made. They actually agree
Black
with
Hole
the decisions we've made because we're clearing up the mess that they left.
getting a mention there. 5-1 now.
Speaker, 1 year ago yesterday, my constituent James Henderson was killed with other aid workers from World Central Kitchen, taking humanitarian aid into Gaza. Jim's family have told me Jim would want confirmation from our government that we're taking all
Flags,
conceivable
please,
steps to
in the
make
chat.
sure that aid, power
Free
and
Palestine.
supplies are safely returned to Gaza. Could the PM confirm he's doing all he can to ensure this? And could the Prime Minister also confirm he will continue to push for a full investigation to be completed into the deaths of Jim and the other British WCK workers, and for appropriate action to be taken?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising this appalling incident, and our thoughts.
Listening to Keith try and show empathy for Gazans is at risk of triggering me there. I just wanted to come in and say that obviously that incident with the World Central Kitchen was appalling. I did content about it at the time. Please do go back and check that out. But we're certainly not going to see any pressure from Keith on Israel, no, in terms of sanctions or even the threat of sanctions or anything. Any sentiments he's about to put to the British public and the House of Commons here are completely bogus, are completely fake. Thank you very much for throwing up the flags and watermelons in the chat there. So, at risk of getting triggered, let's see what Keith's got to say. Should be coming up to the final question now. Nice and calm.
With the families of Jim, of John Chapman and James Kirby. The attacks on aid workers, Mr. Speaker, are never justified. The families do deserve justice. We're pressing the Israeli government to accelerate their investigation, including whether criminal proceedings should be initiated. Can I also say Israel must stop blocking aid into Gaza? Hostages must be released.
Yep. The sausage jokes aside, just for one moment, the very best that he can do is saying that we're going to let them mark their own homework. The people who are being investigated are conducting the investigation into the allegations made against themselves. Namely Israel, obviously. And that's it, Keith. That's how you really, really put pressure on them, is it? Is that how you expect to get justice? Is that how you expect to get a fair accounting of events? And we've heard a similar story just this very day concerning the attack on the ambulance convoy that I mentioned at the top of the stream. An appalling attack which Israel thought left no survivors behind. Alas not. And the sole survivor of the convoy's testimony completely contradicts that of Israel's. So if they're to investigate that, do you think, again, that it's going to be any kind of fair accounting? This man makes me sick to the stomach, people. He really does.
I'll be able to have an urgent resumption of the ceasefire.
Final question, Alberta Costa.
Just before the final question, one last point on what Keith just said there at the very end. Pushing for a ceasefire, is it? Well, I'm not sure if you got the news before I did, but I'm pretty sure I heard this morning, i.e. before Prime Minister's Questions takes place at midday, that Israel have already made plans for what they're going to do with the new parts of Gaza that they're going to occupy, and that doesn't exactly reek of a ceasefire to me, Keith. I mentioned recently about this draft that's been approved by the United States of America. That is, you know, so much precedence with Israel breaking down the talks at the last moment, and twinned with what I just mentioned there about the new territory, the new occupied territory. No, Keith. It just, not a single sentence of what he said then washes whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Double child rapist and murderer Colin Pitchfork is up for parole for the 5th time. Now, I know the Prime Minister doesn't have any direct control, nor should he, over the parole board, but he does have a view. As I've asked all his predecessors, I now put the question to him.
As bad of a case as this is, then, surely you put questions to the Prime Minister to try and get him to act. Not trying to defend him, and this is an awful case he's talking about there.
In prison.
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to him for raising this appalling case, and I absolutely agree with him that there must be maximum penalties for anyone falling into that category. I've seen many of these cases for myself firsthand when I was prosecutor for 5 years, working with the police on really terrible cases, and know the impact that it has on victims. I thank him for raising it.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. We'll let from benches change up. Right.
And that was PMQs, people. And again, another victory for Postman Swat. That means that Black Hole is now eliminated. Yes, eliminated. So we'll have a new contender taking on Postman Swat next week. Just bring the background music up. Well, that was fairly uninspiring, wasn't it, people? Goodness me. It was like pulling teeth, as you said, at one point. It certainly was. Sorry, I'm still just sort of semi-reeling from Keith's comments on Gaza. Let me know what you think about that session of PMQs in the chat, as well as in the comments if you're watching back on a replay. In fact, if you're watching live right now and you have the capability, please do open the comments as well as posting in the chat. Even if you just want to post the raised fist and the cup of tea. Really helps to spread the stream around the algorithm, and double check you've hit that thumbs up button, please, people. Really do appreciate it. So that was that for another week. I'll just clear the scoreboard and whatnot. 5-1, and left it a bit late before the scoring started. The game literally being one of the most interesting points about that session. That's not going to go down in the annals of history. So let's swiftly move on to other things, people. Yeah, waste of money. I mean, add up all of those salaries. All those salaries for all those MPs. 600 and odd MPs. On 80 to about 100k a year, depending on their functions. From base rate through to cabinet. Yeah, big waste of money there. I think you're quite right there, Doc. That's probably a very good diagnosis, I should say, Doc. Alright, people, I've just got a couple of bookmarks here for a couple of developing stories from today. Where to go? Try and finish on a high, so I'll just get through one. Negative story, course, the latest on Trump's tariffs, just very briefly. I'll just get a news page queued up here. Apologies, I thought I'd already bookmarked that. And I don't know if you watched any of the live session earlier. I did watch it from the start. It was pure, unadulterated, deluded claptrap of the highest or lowest division, whichever way that you see it. It was the worst of the worst. This announcement, and it's been hyped up by Trump in his attempt to label it as this big launch of what he thinks is going to be again added to the annals of history, which it won't be. Just a PR stunt, really. That has annoyed me, though, hearing the mainstream media referring to it with Trump's own syntax. Liberation Day, as he refers to it. It shows that he's a business guy and not an economist, that's for sure. So, just got the article here. Just have to resize that, apologies. Had it in the PMQs mode. I'm not sure how long the speech went on for. I think I left it after about 45-50 minutes or so. The announcement. Let's see the latest. Just dive into this one. And while we're diving in, so here's what's going to happen. We'll just get through some of the percentages as to which countries are having their tariff rates raised and whatnot in a moment. Just for a very, very basic example. In our case, the United Kingdom, tariffs are going to be going up by 10%. So that means if we want to sell goods to America, let's say that we send them 1 unit of one product that costs £10,000, we will have to pay the United States £1,000 or $1,000. Trump thinks that this is going to be some sort of he's going to be inundated with wealth from other countries. He thinks that the US are getting ripped off, and these are his words, not mine, of course. But all that's going to follow is said companies are going to increase their prices because, of course, from the perspective of CEOs and investors and whatnot, line on graph must go up. So that'll be, the buck will be passed down to consumers as it always is, and then prices go up, and then there'll be more reciprocal tariffs, and it'll be back and forth, well, you're going to put ours up, we're going to put ours up, yada yada yada. Meantime, like I just said, cost for the consumer escalating and escalating, and that is what causes major economic catastrophes, which happened shortly after the last time US totally skyrocketed tariffs. The Roaring Twenties didn't roar into the 1930s, that's for sure. Right, sorry, I wasn't sure which turn of phrase to use there. I'm quite tired at this point, people. Excuse me if my improv isn't exactly on point. I guess you can kind of see from that picture. Let me just double check now. I'll move this across. Sorry, I don't have a full list, but there's some examples there. Trump was trying to joke about how he'd use a bigger sign, but it was too windy. Yeah, same reason he brought his hat out in case his rug blows off. So EU gonna have those increased by 20%. I won't do the full list, just pick a few out. China 34% there. India's quite an important one. They're going up by 26%, of course. India's a massively growing economy. It's succeeded China in being the most populous country on the planet as well. So these are on top of any existing tariffs, by the way. These are increases, they're not revised amounts, I believe. Although I'm second guessing myself now. BUFU Mike, how are you doing this evening? And Odin Allfather join us in the chat as well. Very nice. Just let us know what you're thinking about these tariffs. So what will happen from here? The dust has got to settle. We've got to see how each country will respond. Canada have been another big one as well recently. Of course, there's been a lot of stuff in the news about tariffs on Canada, again, please do check out my previous content on that. I can't see anything but trade war escalating now. I think that's inevitable. I think that's inevitable, as sure as night follows day. Perhaps not globally, but certainly in a lot of cases, perhaps most cases, that will see the United States become increasingly isolated, which is almost, you know, what Donald Trump thinks he wants. That's what he thinks America wants, is to not be dependent on other countries. For example, he thinks that this is going to woo huge blue chip, I should say, companies to take their jobs over to America. And he's been very vocal about the American automotive industry as well, of course. The car is king in the United States of America. To the extent that actually, towards the beginning of his statement, his speech, he brought on, I think it was one of the union leaders, the Teamsters, I think it was the Teamsters union leader. And, well, I guess we're not going to get through the full in and outs of the cognitive abilities of the average American voter, but they've switched their allegiances to the Republicans because of Trump. Now, in fact, the guy who got up said something, I'm paraphrasing here, but said something along the lines of he thought that Ronald Reagan was the best president ever until Donald Trump came along. Just to show how, you know, you can take that as you will. Random number generator, yeah. We wrote them all down, threw them in the air. Okay, who's got Taiwan? Right, pick that one up. What does it say? It says 32%, Mr. President. That's fantastic. Okay, put it on the board. Can you get a bigger one? I want everybody to be able to see. I'm going to be 82 if I get a third term, by the way, which would be unconstitutional. I don't need glasses. It's for the crowd. So just a few examples there. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be great. Just have to realign this now. A very quick scroll down. And then on to Musk, which is actually some more uplifting news to get towards the end of the stream with. Always like to end on something more jovial. Is that lined up okay? So relief, but where the UK is concerned, this is, in this BBC article. They're saying relief but no delight amongst government ministers. Jonathan Reynolds. He's okay. What does Reynolds say? There's no actual quote. It just says he was there. Okay, fair enough. Right, so who's going to suffer the worst? Let's have a look. Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Bangladesh all fall among the list who will face the heaviest tariffs on the goods that they send to America. That's a good point in that last paragraph on that little report there. Only if American shoppers are prepared to wear higher prices will President Trump gain the extra revenues he hopes for. If they change their buying habits, that penalises those trading partners, but he doesn't get the tariff cash. It's one example of why you can't have it both ways. Not sure how, you know, don't want to sound like a capitalist or anything, but it is, of course, significant, unfortunately, as we're in the grip of global capitalism. But what this will do to the stock market tomorrow remains to be seen. The early indications, though, the dollar has slid, and so have a lot of stocks. S&P by 1.5%, Nasdaq by 2%. Shares in Nike fell 6%, General Motors dropped by 3%. And that's a very interesting one. I'm not saying this from any investor sort of viewpoint. This isn't any sort of monetary advice that I'm giving here, although I have said tongue-in-cheek previously that if you're into that sort of thing, you should short sell everything that Elon Musk touches. Alas, I seem to have been proved right, which we'll go on to after this story. But the reason the General Motors one has caught my left eye's attention is that they were the very focus, that industry was the main focus of his announcement today, to the extent that he had 20 auto workers on the front rows, and he kept referring to them. At one point he went over and gave the MAGA hat that he had to these guys who were sitting in the front row. One of them, a representative or the leader, got up and spoke, but shares dipped. So that's obviously the opposite of the desired effect from Donald Trump's point of view, despite his efforts. And speaking of labouring under false apprehensions, or misapprehensions, I should say, that's going to come into the Musk story that I'll go on to in just one moment as well. You'll see why. Oh, so there you go. Before I came on to get ready for the stream, like I said, he was still speaking, so I'm not familiar with perhaps some of the latter points. But as I was watching it, I did keep saying to myself, he's been pretty quiet about Canada and Mexico, of course, who he's often pretty vocal about. He's thrown a lot of shade at both of them, and not only over tariffs, there's obviously migration coming into this as well, and he's accused Canada of letting huge amounts of, what's it called? Is it fentanyl? Fentanyl over the border. But they're not subject to the tariffs for now, which is quite interesting, because obviously responded in kind to Trump. They were very vocal as well and very critical of him. We've sent Starmer over, who kissed his arse, gave him an unprecedented invitation for a second state visit in a letter from the King. They, that is Canada and Mexico, throw shade back at Trump and threaten to increase tariffs. If he puts theirs up, we pussyfoot around it and we get our tariffs increased by 10%. Well, just goes to show. Doesn't always work, does it? Nice job, Starmer. Okay, so according to senior admin officials, spoke to reports earlier, tariffs placed on Mexico and Canada remain in effect, but there won't be any new ones for now. Quite interesting. That's quite interesting. Australia, though, have been affected by them, and they've hit back. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says they're totally unwarranted, The new tariff is the same as ours, 10%. So will Keith respond in a similar fashion? I think you probably, spoiler alert, already heard a lot of what he will say in today's PMQ sessions. The last thing we want is a trade war, like totally unaware and oblivious to the fact that we're already in one. I don't think there'll be much critique. That guy in the background really looks like he doesn't want to be there. Right, so it looks like I just missed the last sort of few minutes of the speech, which went on for 50 minutes. Blah, blah, blah. Declaration of Economic Independence. Okay. Yeah. Where have we heard that before? Cough, Brexit, cough. So there are some all-encompassing tariffs for specific products. Okay, so that's a new one. I don't think he mentioned that while I watched. 25% on all foreign-made automobiles, he announced. That's cars, if you're from... I know it is cars as well in America, but you'd never hear someone from Britain calling it an automobile. Baseline tariff of 10% will be applied to every country. What's that one? Is that beef or rice? They mentioned beef and rice. Sorry, that one's not very clear. Pictures, pictures, yada, yada, yada. Just trying to pick out any other significant examples. Asia seem to be the main target. Yeah, look at all these. I mean, excuse me. Sri Lanka 44%, Myanmar 44%. Sovereignty. Just members of the press taking pictures of the charts there. That's all I'll say about that for now. I was going to do this as an episode of Batshit Crazy Corner, but I forgot to do the intro. But you might be watching this back on a segment. Who knows? Okay, people, moving on. Speaking of Trump and Musk's Batshit Crazy Corner. Something that might raise a smile now. A couple of things that I hope will raise a smile. First of all, although there have been conflicting reports, I've got to say. So Tesla sales have taken a plunge. Obviously, that's been happening for a while. But most recently, today, of course, it was announced that it's rumoured, or it's supposed to be a leak from a Politico article, that he's stepping down from D.O.G.E. To concentrate on his businesses, which of course have taken a massive tumble. However, it's been said that Tesla's stock has gone up a bit since he made that announcement. But stock and sales are two separate entities, to be honest. Musk certainly knows that. And that's why they say that it's the most overvalued stock on the market. Again, this isn't going into monetary advice. It's about the politics of everything. It's about how society is affected by stock markets as well. But where sales are concerned, yeah, it's taken a massive plunge, as you can see here. Down 13%. I'll just skim through this. No, oh, actually, quiz time, people. Is it 6 or 7? There are 6 or 7 cars in the following picture. 3 of them are Teslas. Now let's see if you're eagle-eyed enough to identify the 3 Teslas in the picture, people. The game begins as soon as the picture appears on the screen. 2 actually, sorry, it's 2 of the 7 cars are Teslas. Hard to tell. Oh, some of them are blue and some of them are white. I think, what else could there be? How would you know that? Do let me know. Do let me know, people. That's a tricky one. What else? I think I've got that Politico article about the D.O.G.E thing. So yeah, stocks are down, and I heard one stat that, wow, strap yourselves in, people. Just the space of, weeks, Elon Musk has lost about $200 billion. His wealth has been reduced by something like $150 to $200 billion. Wow. That's like 10% of the GDP of the United Kingdom gone in weeks. Scroll down here. So this rumour about him quitting D.O.G.E came from Politico. I've got up here. Trump has apparently told his inner circle about this. He'll be stepping back in the coming weeks. But he remains pleased with Musk and his D.O.G.E initiative. Both men have decided in recent days it'll soon be time for Musk to return to his businesses and take on a supporting role. Many people expected a public falling out before they parted ways. That could still happen. That's not to say that they won't fall out in the future. You certainly can't rule that out, given the precedents, given Trump's reputation. And of course, he did break down during the Musk, that is, broke down during the Fox News interview, was it? Where he was being asked about how D.O.G.E is affecting his businesses, Tesla, of course, being the main one, SpaceX as well. But he's still somewhat deluded, somewhat detached from reality. He believes that it's his time away from the businesses that has affected the stock price, as opposed to, let's say, things like salutes, tweets that he's put out there, the way that he's attacked D.E.I., the way that he's so obviously now attacking the left, that he's firmly on the right. And that's on a macro scale as well. A litany of examples. But he still thinks that it's because of his time away as opposed to his actions. Because he's so rich that he thinks he can afford to be so irresponsible and get away with it, Oh, our press team will handle it, yada yada yada. Or he actually tries to monitor and sheriff it all himself via his own social media platform, doesn't he? For someone who's supposedly running a bunch of companies and also an unofficial government department, he sure has a lot of time to tweet. Other YouTubers who specify in critique of Musk have pointed out a number of times how frequently he goes on Twitter. And it just can't be so. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention at the same time as pretending to be one of the top professional gamers in the world. Yeah. Where's the music gone? Sorry, I was talking for so long there. The background music loop run out. Okay, people. The tangent alert was only on yellow there, it didn't quite get to red. $200 billion down. He's 200 billion down. But I mentioned a lot of contradiction in statements, so this Politico article says quite clearly, whatever source that they have, that Donald Trump has told his inner circle that everything's okay and that he's leaving. And then on the other hand, they've been saying that it isn't true. I don't think that's in this Politico article, but have criticised the article. One possibility there, I guess, is that if Musk wasn't aware of this, and he found out through the article coming out, he might have not been too impressed, and so they've had to come out and deny it. I don't know if that's the case. That's pure speculation. That's not any kind of official prediction or anything. Certainly not. And then there was the vote in Wisconsin, wasn't there, as well? That's something else. Okay. Yeah. So the Republican candidate was backed by Musk. And in case you weren't aware, there was a... Oh, I think I've actually got this. Yeah, right. So I bookmarked a Blue Sky post about this. Please do follow us on Blue Sky at MyLeftEye UK. This sums it up, so just while that's loading, sorry it's been a little slow. Musk really wanted to get behind the candidate because it was voting over, basically it's a judicial vote, and the guy he was backing was probably going to cancel investigations into Tesla, so he did a huge rally. I'm not sure where to begin on. It's just so fucking batshit crazy. Where to start? Okay, you can see for yourself, he's wearing a wedge of cheese on his bastard head. Right? And at this rally, and at the polls as well, I believe, he was literally buying people's vote. He was bribing people to vote, giving away millions of dollars, okay, and he still lost. It wasn't narrow either. He got his ass kicked up and down the street. People ran screaming away from him, voting Republican. $20 million he paid people to sign petitions and canvas. $1 million giveaways, rally TV interviews. But as Ron Flipkowski posts here, says that Wisconsin didn't appreciate an oligarch trying to buy their civil liberties. Civil liberties. And he really looks impressed with himself. You know, this is man-child personified, which has been one observation about Elon Musk. They've tried to spin it as autism, as Asperger's, but it's not. It's just rich and entitled arsehole laughing at himself, thinking that he can get away with anything. And yes, this is actually a thing now. The wedge of cheese on the head. Sometimes, I'm sure you do this as well, you just have to stop and think, you know, is this actually where we're at? A guy with the wedge of cheese on his head, giving out millions of dollars. People weren't impressed in the comments. I can't read all of those out. What a corrupt cheesehead. Is this the day we get liberated from Elmo? How is he not in jail? Yeah. Think about all the money here. Musk could have fed the poor and given all those that lost their jobs some decent service. Those who lost their jobs, I think that's supposed to say. And that's from an account called Elon's Cheese Hat was made in China. Pretty quick on the ball there. Well done, if you're watching. I know that's a long shot, but there you go. Speaking of that, actually, I'm reminded of a time when he put out one of his polls. He used to do these polls all the time, especially since he took over Twitter. But I think this was before he bought Twitter. And in this one, he said, if you all vote for it in the poll, then I'll give away X amount of dollars to everybody on the planet, because he could have afforded to do it, something like that. Feed the poor might have been the actual terms used, and it was an overwhelming vote for him to do so, and then he reneged on that promise. Of course he did. That's a good one, the wedge of cheese on the Cybertruck. Well, speaking of which, I saw a genuine picture of road traffic accidents, or incidents, or whatever they call it, in which sorry. So a Cybertruck had rammed into the back of a Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah. You know, old Volkswagen Beetle style. I'm not talking about the new style ones. We're talking about, you know, like your classic Volkswagen Beetle. And the front of the Cybertruck was all crinkled and smashed up, and God knows how many panels, like into about a third of the way into the front of the car, the truck, whatever, the monstrosity. And the back of the VW Beetle was just like slightly dented, like the bumper or fender, as they call it in the United States, was a bit bent off, and that was it. But the Cybertruck certainly bore the brunt of the damage, and the guy, or person, I should say, who posted that the meme said, it's not even the best Nazi car. And the size difference as well, like, I've never seen a Cybertruck in real life, thankfully. I mean, they're not even allowed over here, are they? But I can't remember the, you know, dimensions off the top of my head. You should go and you know, look it up yourself, or watch a Thunderfoot video, or Cavernacle, whatever. Free plugs there, guys. But they're massive, and when you compare that to as cars go, relatively small Volkswagen Beetle. And the panels rip off if you go over, I don't know, probably 30 miles an hour. Just can't, you know, they're glued on. It's held together with glue. They're held together with glue. Lost by 10 points. $28 million. Couldn't even buy for people despising that much. Listen, Nazi Lad by Rocks. I'm not familiar with that one. Alright, let me know what you think about that one in the chat or in the comments if you're watching back on a replay, people. I'm going to bring this stream to a close shortly. I was hoping I'd have time to go into the latest in the Middle East. I guess I went into that a little in PMQs as well. But I will, of course, keep my left eye on that situation, and as always, we show solidarity with Palestine. Just going to say another thank you to the members, if you'll excuse me for removing the chat. I'll update that list as well. Thanks again for that gifted membership, James. If you're still watching or if you're watching back on a replay, much appreciated. And who was the recipient? Oh, Stute KH, Viking, Bear, what was it? Well, I hope you enjoy the perks anyway. Please hang around though, people. Don't go anywhere. Let's see if anybody's live for a raid. I might be able to join you there very, very briefly, but I do have to come offline pretty soon. We've got No Justice and we've got Kevin Logan. Who did we go into last time, people? We'll try and spread the love and solidarity evenly. Please let me know if you have any preference in the chat, otherwise I shall randomly select. Thanks a lot, Flow Snake. You're all very welcome, of course. It's my pleasure to be here with you. Good to catch up with the Brew crew. Okay, I guess I'm almost certain that we raided into Helena last, so let's go and see Mr. Kevin Logan. Of course, if you don't already, please do go and give them a follow. That's Kevin Logan. And No Justice at MTG. MTG. That's the initials, not the drink. The hot, tasty beverage. Oh, and yeah, a collaboration with Turn Left as well on the stream, so that should be pretty interesting. Great stuff. Right, people, I've been your host, Lefty. You've been wonderful. Thanks for staying polite and cordial in the chats. Keep an eye out for more live streams and content to come later in the week. I will hop over and join you in Kevin Logan's stream very briefly, but do join me over there. But if you're not coming over, do take care, everybody. My left, I'll be seeing you soon. You've been watching the Brews at 10. Free Palestine and power to the people. Good night.
my badger!